Okay, I think we're live, so we are going to get straight into it. Welcome to the AI Can't Say If You Built the Right Thing webinar from both Testmo and Sembi, as indicated below. The title for the webinar is somewhat deliberate. I know what it might sound like, so I want to address that straight away. Might sound like we're about to do a talk about how we're AI skeptics. And I'm not going to do that. What we're actually going to do is look at a very specific problem that we think AI creates for software quality, a real operational one that I see firsthand with the teams that I work with, and that I basically developed quite a lot of this content from. So the question or the statement on the slide is basically one that I keep coming back to. When your team can build more software more quickly, how do you know whether what you built is actually the right thing? And does it do what you intended for it to do? So over the next sort of 20 minutes or so, I'm going to dig into that. And we've also got a couple of other bits going on. JP, who you may see on the video as well, will
Hello,
be
hello.
joining me for a fireside chat later in the webinar. Hi, JP. Um, by way of real quick introductions, I'll do some proper ones as we get into the content. I'm Simon Knight. I'm the PM, PO, and evangelist at Testmo, which is part of the Sembi portfolio. So I've been in software quality and product for 15 years or so now. I started out as a software tester, moved into product management, and that kind of background, that history shapes some of how I think about this stuff. As you can see, we're joined by JP. Hello again, JP. JP's the VP of Engineering at Sembi, and we'll get into JP's background properly just prior to the sort of fireside chat, so I'll do a proper introduction there. But he's kind of coming at this from the sort of engineering and the platform side, which obviously gives us a slightly different lens to look at this challenge through. In terms of format, so I'm going to run through sort of my hypothesis, my argument for about 20 minutes or so, and then JP and I are going to get into a bit of a discussion around some of the challenges that we see, and maybe some other bits and pieces. We'll look to take questions from you at that point as well and see if we can address some of those. So that's kind of the agenda. We're going to be talking about the problems that AI is actually creating for software quality. Then we're going to refer a little bit to some of the data from the Sembi 2026 Quality Pulse report, which gives us something to kind of ground the discussion in, rather than just my opinions. And we're going to speak to why intent and quality context matter. So this is kind of the more important part of the argument, I think. And try and dig into why AI doesn't automatically have access to either of those things. Then we're going to do the fireside chat with JP and try to make this all a little bit more practical, closing out with where we think this is all going from a sort of practices standpoint, and also from a sort of product direction standpoint. So I'll say right up front, again, I'm not going to argue that AI is either magic or terrible. Most of the teams that I talk to, and certainly the ones I work with, are a bit more comfortable with AI than that. It's genuinely useful, but it also definitely does create more work to review, interpret, and trust. And the goal of this webinar is to kind of look at that problem honestly. To help keep us honest, please feel free to use the Zoom Q&A buttons to post any questions that you think we should try and tackle during the fireside chat, and we'll try to make sure the best or the most insightful ones get addressed. And there's also an upvote mechanism, I believe, in Zoom, which you can use to help us do that if you wish. So as I mentioned, I'm Simon Knight. Honestly, I didn't forget my name there, just pausing for dramatic effect. Just wanted to provide a little bit more context on where I'm coming from with this. So I spent the first chunk of my career as a software tester, as I said, so doing things like performance testing, exploratory testing, test automation, test management, that kind of stuff. Gradually moving into more sort of thought leadership within the testing community before ultimately moving into product, where I've been for coming on to around 10 years now. First at Idera and now at Sembi, primarily running product for Testmo. Why does that background matter for this conversation? Well, you know, that kind of gives me some interesting perspectives. I think you may disagree. I've done the QA work firsthand. I know what test assets actually look like in practice. And, you know, in my experience, they're often a bit messy. Sometimes they're out of date. Sometimes they flat out contradict each other. And, you know, it's a body of evidence that real teams have to maintain. So again, you know, the original question, can AI actually tell you whether you built the right thing, is one that I find genuinely interesting coming from that background, because I know what the evidence we'd need to answer that question actually looks like in the real world. So that's where I'm coming from. Let's get into the actual problem. So most AI conversations start in the same kind of place. AI writes more code. AI opens more pull requests. AI can generate tests. AI produces summaries and documentation faster. There's a lot more of it, and you know, a lot of that creates real value. But obviously, output is not the whole system. Every change that the AI generates needs to be understood. It needs to be reviewed and tested. It needs to be secured, and ultimately it needs to be released. So if your AI output is growing faster than the team's ability to reason about it, then you know the bottleneck of creating value hasn't really disappeared. It's just moved. We've just shifted it right. So, you know, that's kind of what this diagram is showing. On the left, you've got AI generating changes. And on the right, you've got some team of humans potentially trying to review and understand what all that looks like. And, you know, that's kind of your bottleneck right now. And one of the challenges, I think, around this is that what the AI is doing here can be like incredibly plausible. It compiles, it passes tests, it looks reasonable at the point of review, but in the end, it may still not reflect what the team actually intended to build, leading to, you know, a lot of cycles and iterations in order to actually get to what you wanted to build. So the tricky kind of risk here is not that the AI just generates bad code, because we already kind of know how to deal with bad code. It'll fail tests and somebody will catch that. The harder problem is that AI generates plausible code that looks good and passes tests and compiles and does all those things, but it did that against incomplete intent. It builds what it was told to build, but what it was told to build was wrong. Maybe even, you know, only subtly, but still wrong. And that's kind of the problem I'm focusing on today. So grounding this in some data, Sembi published its 2026 Software Quality Pulse Report earlier this year. Responses from around 4,000 software quality and security professionals, drawn from various places across our own sort of product portfolio and some of the communities surrounding those products. And, obviously this is a vendor authored survey. And, I'd be a little bit skeptical about any of those things, including one from my own employer. So, I'm not just going to take the content here at face value. But it does capture some, pertinent and useful information, something a lot of teams will recognize from practice. So highlighting three numbers here. Our respondents estimated that about 53% of the organization they work for's code is now AI generated or it's AI assisted. So, that's already into the sort of majority territory. 61% reported moderate to dramatic increases in QA testing demand because of AI generated code. So more code means more to test, review, validate. So probably this doesn't come as a surprise to anybody, but it's kind of useful to see that confirmation of what we think we're seeing. And then, there's this number. Only 17.2% said in our survey said that AI-driven testing has had a significant impact on QA coverage, quality, and speed. So, what conclusion do we draw from that? Well, it's not that AI creates more code and AI testing is absorbing all of that extra code, right? Clearly, it's not that. It's a bit messier. What is actually happening is AI-assisted output is increasing, and the quality side of the system, as indicated by this number, isn't keeping up as well. So, there's a gap there, and we want to try and address it. Did AI break quality? I mean, that's a question you could ask, right? Based on the previous slide, that's potentially a conclusion that we could draw. But that would probably be an oversimplification. The survey data doesn't prove that AI causes every downstream quality problem. A more plausible, sorry to use that word again, alternative is that teams adopting AI heavily were already moving quite quickly, already maybe had some integration weaknesses or were already under delivery pressure. And that AI may simply be exposing those weaknesses, those problems that they already had, rather than actually creating them. I think this sort of aligns a bit with my own experience. We already knew where there were bottlenecks in our process, but you accelerate one part of the sort of system, and it just reinforces the cracks that already existed. The way that I'd maybe think about this as a more defensible claim is AI increases the volume and the speed of change, and review, testing, and security and release processes have to figure out how to absorb that pace of change. And as I've already said, if those systems were already stretched, then AI is going to make that stretch more visible. So in practice, for a lot of teams, that means more change moving through a delivery system that was already kind of under pressure. The signal in the data is it's real, even if the causality is a bit messier than perhaps the headlines sort of suggest. So a question I think about focusing on is what does quality need to look like when the volume and pace of development is this high? And this is where I'd kind of go with that. It's where I think the conversation needs to move past AI writes code and AI writes tests. AI agents don't only need access to your code base. Code context tells them what exists, and it helps them understand structure, dependencies, and implementation patterns. And, I use that stuff all the time. It's great. But code doesn't always explain what matters. It tells the agent which customer problem triggered the work, which behavior is business critical, what edge case broke things last time, which trade-off was deliberate. And it could tell you which risks someone accepted in release planning. But if we look at what's feeding this AI agent in the middle of the diagram, we've got tests, requirements, defects, customer signals, release evidence, risk markers, and this is all sort of intent, edge cases, constraint, history, and priorities. And this is what we can think about as quality context. So we've got code context, which is super useful, but we need this quality context as well, the evidence that teams use to understand whether the code change they made here is safe, useful, and aligned with what they actually meant to build. All of these things, the test cases, the expected outcomes, the failures that have occurred against those cases, exploratory session notes, release notes, all of this stuff that's embedded within this quality context help to explain why something matters. And then you've got human judgment, which is at the end of the flow, still kind of deciding what's acceptable. And what all of this stuff does is help change the quality of the information this agent is working with before it gets to your human at the end here, the human in the loop, helping to supply that judgment. So there's a version of the argument I just made that says existing QA assets are a gold mine for AI. If you point an LLM at your test suite, it'll discover perfect product intent. And I kind of agree with that, but it does get kind of complicated, I think, as I started the webinar out with. Test cases, bug reports, release notes, all of those things, they often contain real product knowledge. They'll tell you what mattered, what broke, where someone cared enough to check. And obviously for products that have been around for a while, those artifacts may be some of the best evidence for what the product is actually supposed to do, but they're not necessarily a clean source of truth. Old test suites, if you're familiar with any of those things, they're going to contain duplicated, stale, inconsistent, and sometimes information that's just wrong. The framing that I would use is maybe instead QA assets are product memory. They're useful, as I said, sometimes a bit contradictory, but definitely worth interrogating. Don't point AI at the test suite and discover perfect intent. More like there is evidence in all of these things, and AI is actually pretty good at helping teams to surface it, finding consistencies, trace behaviors back to old defects, identify where coverage exists, but intent is still potentially unclear. Judgment has to come from the team, and the artifacts are the input to that judgment, not a replacement for it. Looks like we've lost JP temporarily. Hopefully he's able to make it back into the call. We're going to get to him in just a couple of slides time. In the meantime, just kind of continuing this hypothesis, this sort of framing. Where does this leave us in terms of what quality work actually looks like in an AI-assisted team? Well, as I already sort of mentioned earlier, AI doesn't remove the work of quality. It just sort of shifts it a little bit. Some of the work moves earlier, I think, into clearer intent, into better examples, explicit risk discussions, more testable requirements. If you're going to hand a piece of work over to an AI agent, the quality of what you give, what you supply it with is going to matter a lot. Vague intent going in means plausible but wrong code potentially coming out. So it's a garbage in, garbage out kind of situation. That problem obviously has always existed. It just gets magnified at scale, right? When you're feeding garbage into an AI, it's gonna spit garbage out at speed. I think some of the work moves into the actual sort of development workflow itself. So where AI assisted changes need review, traceability, and connected evidence. So not just asking the question of did the unit tests pass, it's do these tests against this change with this context and give us the confidence that we need that we're actually building the right thing here and that it's being built in the right way. And I think some of the work moves later into interpretation as well. What do the test results, the security findings, the failure history actually mean for a release decision? Someone still has to make a call as to whether you're ready to ship or not. And what I think this means for QA specifically is that quality isn't just a downstream checking function in this model, not that it ever has been. It becomes part of how the team makes AI-assisted delivery understandable and trustworthy across the whole flow. JP, welcome back. I'm still talking, but it's good to have you back again. So, from a sort of QA role perspective, it's an expansion. Definitely not a diminishment. Definitely not a reduction in QA responsibility here. It's, I think, if anything, it's expanding earlier during the work and later down the work stream as well. May not always feel that way, but I think that's what we're going to see. So 5 concrete habits that could make AI-assisted delivery easier to trust. So what good may look like. Not wanting to be prescriptive here, but these are things that I think, if they're in place, are going to make AI-assisted delivery a lot easier to trust. So make intent explicit. So not just the implementation plan, the real why behind the customer problem you're seeking to solve, what behavior you're seeking to preserve, what the non-goals are, making risk visible. So if there's a known edge case, previous failure, or a trade-off that was made, document that somewhere so the team and so that your AI agents can see it. Make sure your evidence is connected, so tests, checks, review notes, link back to the intent that they support, so linking them back to here, if possible. So, not just a pile of assertions, a really traceable picture of what it is that was checked and why. Review your AI output, so treat it as a suggestion, not a finished artifact. Make sure you've got generated tests in particular. Although they're kind of useful as a starting point, they definitely do still need a human looking at them before they count as evidence. And make release decisions accountable. Ensure somebody is making that call with all the available evidence and that there's a record of it. I don't think, I'm not like, there's nothing new here. This is all basically common sense. But obviously AI and the pace of AI development makes skipping some of these steps a little bit more expensive because you can move faster and the AI will just carry all of that ambiguity. So these things here are the same things I think the good teams have always cared about. They just, arguably matter more now. This is where we think tooling is maybe going. The last thing before the sort of fireside chat. Why we think quality systems have a more interesting role to play in the AI era than perhaps the conversation usually gives them credit for. I think the kind of useful question isn't only whether AI agents can access more data. Obviously they can. It's whether that we're giving them access to the right evidence, whether we're supplying them with the right context in the right sort of workflow stages with the right permissions, and whether, as I said on the previous slide, there's traceability and a sort of causal chain as to why that evidence matters. So, the sort of architecture here shows quality data sources on the left. So all of your test cases, runs, results, all of those things. Through a kind of quality context layer, so being fed through this quality context layer in the middle, which normalizes, enriches, deduplicates some of those things. And on the right, ultimately, your quality context being delivered to AI agents and workflows, and then ultimately supporting developers in their IDE or their chat tool, and also to QA reviewers through sort of governed access and completing the human review in the loop with full traceability of how you got from here. Okay, I think as we've established, the core argument is that AI creates more output. That output still needs intent, evidence, and judgment. Bottleneck moves, generation to understanding. Probably most of us are seeing that day to day. And quality context, the evidence that teams use to reason about whether a change is safe and aligned with what they meant to build, is super important. What does that mean in practice for engineering teams, for QA teams, products that we build around them? that's what we're here to kind of talk about. So hopefully you all have sent us some questions. We're going to have that conversation right now with my fireside chat guest, John Paul Herold.
Thanks, Simon. Appreciate everybody. Some great topics and content just to hopefully get people's minds rolling on these concepts and ideas and maybe even problems you've been facing within your space, your company, your team. So, like Simon said, please use that Q&A section to give us some good material to cover. Maybe a little bit of intro for myself, Simon. I think next slide. Yeah. So I'm a recent joined to Sembi. I joined as VP of Engineering in April of this year. A little background on myself. I've spent nearly my whole career focused on and around platform engineering, serving the internal customers, being the development teams and all the supporting supplementary roles around those development teams to help try to increase the pace of shipping quality software that can help a team separate and a company separate from competition. So I've always been in that space. I've enjoyed it, and I most recently was at Southwest Airlines for 8 years, focused again on platform engineering as a senior engineer. When I joined, I took my path into people leadership and being an engineering manager for one of those teams. Spent time in cybersecurity, leading our cloud security organization, and then most recently development platforms, where I focused again on the holistic developer experience and how Southwest Airlines was both onboarding, building, reviewing, deploying continuously thereafter, that holistic spectrum. I Over those years, and especially in the last year, I started going a lot deeper into AI. Honestly, for my own skill set, I love still building myself, working on stuff on the side, playing on my own home lab at home, and AI became a very very helpful tool in general. But I didn't have my eye open moment, I'd say, until February, and I, like I said, I was going pretty deep on this for focusing on product strategy for a platform organization, for an engineering group when you start thinking about AI. And I had been in touch with Sembi, just kind of chatting. And when I had that eye open moment of how much every company is going to have to reason with this influx in code generation, theory of constraints, like Simon was saying, where is the next constraint that will be pressured or will be highlighted due to this massive volume of code writing, code generation? It became pretty clear that making sure quality of that agent output became kind of top priority for me. So that's what ended up bringing me here to Sembi. Super excited to talk with y'all and kind of brainstorm on ways that we're internally trying to improve our engineering practices, which is a lot of that experience has led to this webinar. But then furthermore, what we're seeing with customers using test cases and all the metadata surrounding them to have that available to their agent's context window and ultimately help increase the quality of that agent output.
That's great, JP. Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my slides at this point. So we can have a real cozy fireside chat. I have to say there's no fireside here, but certainly here in Europe there's a great big blazing ball of fire in the sky currently that's keeping us all toasty.
Texas is pretty hot as well, by the way.
To be sure, yeah. I had some stock questions kind of lined up, just in case we didn't get any questions from our attendees, but I can see we are starting to get some of those through now. So I think what I'm going to do, JP, if it's okay with you, is just kind of start with one of my stock questions, and then we'll sort of jump into some of the questions that look super interesting from the attendees, and we can start to dig into those a little bit. So, sure. I mean, as part of your introduction, you obviously mentioned your background and what you're doing right now. So, obviously, within a Sembi context, you've got oversight of all of the engineering teams and the platforms that they're working on, the tools that they're working with, the products that they're developing. But as you just mentioned, you've also got visibility into how our customers are doing those things as well, and to some extent how our partners and other people are doing that stuff. So, I guess where are you seeing AI changing engineering workflows most quickly? Um, what do you see as like being the biggest impact on engineering workflows from AI currently in those areas? So both internally and within our customers as well.
Sure. Big question. I think I'll start by saying we're still exploring a lot of this, and I think anybody probably on the webinar is felt a moment where they're maybe you feel behind at times, maybe you feel ahead. There's this big, I'd say, rebase of kind of just new ways of working and skill sets, roles, responsibilities are shifting and kind of morphing and changing. Tooling is feels like we have there's some new project, some new open source pattern, some new agent harness that's coming out every other day. So things are dynamic, and I'll start by saying that the one big thing I talk about with my org and we're talking about with customers is it really does come into that output versus outcome kind of discussion. So cool, like token usage, leaderboard stuff. Maybe that was a fad for a little bit. Hopefully that kind of fades, but really we're trying to look at the use of a new technology and how that impacts the outcomes for a team that help the company, that helps customers live a better life or do something that separates them from their competition. So code generation's increasing, pull requests and merge requests are increasing, and we candidly are just seeing constraints and a bunch of stuff that we kind of knew we had to do already, even without AI. So we wanted to make sure we had a good understanding holistically of a problem and all the context around it, customer signals related to a feature, operational characteristics of the service we're changing, security ramifications and risk there, test cases and trends over time, and what areas seem to be most sensitive to to changes overall related to customer user flows. Like all this stuff we've had to do, and pull request review rate and making sure that was fast. All this stuff we've been asked to do. It's just been hard to do it candidly with our own human context limits, and seeing within my teams and talking with customers how AI is helping us potentially do some of those things that we've been needing to do and actually do them and do them faster. That's where we start getting into those constraint points that frankly, like you said earlier, Simon, I think are highlighting existing process problems, opportunities, if you will, and other areas that once you dial the amplitude, start really screaming a little louder.
Yeah, I talk with one of our engineers internally who might actually be on this webinar, and one of the things that I mentioned to him recently was I feel like I need to have a kind of paradigm shift in my own thinking about my own role and how I approach that, and use AI tools to help facilitate some of the acceleration that we're seeing currently. And obviously my role as a product manager is different from an engineering role, but I still think that notion of having a bit of a sort of shift in mindset, how you're actually looking at some of these challenges in the first place in order to try and tackle them is maybe an important one.
And something else that comment made me think about so rewiring our brains to try to compound learnings, to try to help the next engineer, help your next pull request, help your next change, your next incident, your next test case or next test plan. Again, it's nothing crazy. Git commit messages, comments and tickets, all this plain text, API access. One of the things I do love, and a big change I see with AI is that we're starting to really elevate getting stuff out of our brains, into written documents, accessible data stores. We're talking about API integrations, and again, all this stuff. Candidly, we as technology companies in every domain, every industry, we should have been doing already. But because now you have large language models that are able to access and pull more of that in, along with their own large language knowledge, and connect all these different systems, the MCP, leveraging skills and local files. Markdown is having a resurgence, which I frankly love compared to proprietary formats. All that stuff is really, really great. And it's I think, again, we're at this really dynamic time, and frankly, also still towards the beginning of a large shift over the world, really, where how do we harness this? How do we bake it into our harness? How do we think about the quality and the high value context to make available to our agents, so that ultimately, as our workforce becomes more augmented by agents and the ratio of work and stories taken off our backlog are increasingly a ratio of human and agent, we can trust that we have good guardrails, good controls, good gates when it comes to intent, and that's one of the things that I know you and I like talking about on the side.
Yeah, to be sure. Just a quick additional comment from me, and then maybe we'll start to tackle some of the attendee questions. You mentioned compounding learning. I think, we live in a truly interesting time with all that implies. And one of the challenges with compounding learning is that the very tool that helps us to do that also presents us with a risk of basically robbing us of that learning, because we're outsourcing it to the AI in the first place, and our own sort of cognitive facilities are diminished as a result. So we have to kind of address that challenge as well.
I mean, since we're just chatting here by a fireside, virtual fireside, just a tip that I use myself, and I'd encourage others: use, like, flip inverse your prompts and inverse your interaction with your agent. Like, use pointed at, if you're using one of our beta customers using our MCP server, ask and prompt, what can you tell me and teach me about this application using the test cases. And, like, you could put yourself in the mindset of almost a new engineer, new quality engineer, or QA tester coming in, and wanting to understand, like, what does this company do? What are these applications? What are the user flows? Where is there the most friction, the most pain? All, like, really insightful things that help you as somebody onboarding or just being a good professional, using data from our system, using increasingly connections to other data stores within your company to almost quiz you and test you. And I do this for my own personal learning plans. If there's a topic, for instance, that I know I want to get into, I'll leverage a few agent skills that I found over the months. I was about to say years, but it's definitely months at this point, to surface some good white papers, some good topics, and then have it create a learning plan for me. And we're starting to think about that internally as well, on how do we leverage this data to really improve our understanding of systems.
Definitely. I'm a big fan of Notebook LM for that as well. Okay, so while we're on the topic of thinking and the sort of philosophical angle, there's a question here. I'm not sure who this is from, so sorry I can't cite your name. How should we think about the tools or guidelines we use to build trust in AI-generated code output now? So this sort of tracks back to, I guess, some of the stuff you were talking about, the prompts a moment ago, JP. With things changing so quickly, we're all feeling that pain week to week. What we thought and built on last week is no longer valid. Being able to let things go as things move on. So back to the original question, how should we think about the tools or guidelines we use to build trust in AI-generated code output now?
It's a good one. My mind at least goes to, what are the truths, what are the knowns, and that's I think where it really starts zooming in on and highlighting that intent word and programming languages will change, frameworks will change. For anybody who's been around the JavaScript ecosystem, you know this, feel this. Even
Yep.
pick any language, it's the same deal. But those things change. The implementation patterns changed. We're seeing the commoditization of writing of code. Frankly, there still needs to be an art and a skill to it, and I think people need to be able to sanity check. But it's been mostly commoditized at this point, and I have friends who've never had any background in writing code, building stuff within their company for themselves and their teams, which I think is amazing. But what remains? What is that truth? And it is that intent, that what you want the system to do, which frankly test cases are a great example of that. It's almost like the behavioral contract that you need your agent to ensure it hits, no matter what new pattern, what new model changes the way the implementation actually works. What are those truths? And really working with your team. And what another thing I love about all this discussion is it's not just quality we're talking about. It's not just development. It's not just product. It's not just any of those groups. It's all of us trying to figure out, okay, how do we better clarify and maintain the intent of our application, the things it needs to do that align with customer value, that also bring financial benefits to the company and our group. So
Value
it's
is the key
huge
word there,
value.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. We've got another question here. This one's from Gwen. Got the name this time. I love this one. In a world where AI writes most of the code and can fix it too, should we still even care whether it's well architected? I mean, as long as it works, right? Is there a point at which humans no longer need to understand what's been built? And if not, what's the thing that stops us getting there? So there's quite a lot packed in there. I guess, in short, do we really need to care about what the AI has built and how it built it, if it works and I guess meets the intent?
This is a good one. I'll say like my thoughts, my philosophical and personal thoughts of this have spanned the spectrum. I cannot separate myself from kind of my background and a lot of the more formative material that I read that kind of shapes how I think about complex systems. Code is craft, the Etsy blog that was kind of early days, DevOps and early days, cloud systems and scale is still just something that I hold very highly. And I think the art of architecting systems is supremely important. I do talk a lot though with my team, and I am starting to think more and more about how to ensure that the outcomes ultimately maintain. And I might not care as much about the framework or the library used to instrument this for observability or to test that for this language. And as if our risk is within control, if our customers are happy, financials look good, if our risk is within control, if our cloud costs are manageable, if the culture of my engineering and if my engineers are good and positive and happy, efficiency and lead time is fast. Like I could see a future where maybe I care less. But Gwen, I'd be interested your thoughts. Simon, I don't know if you've been kind of dabbling or thinking about this more existential topic at all over your time in
Well,
the topic.
I don't spend a bunch of time in the code myself. I mean, a little bit of time, but I'm not a developer, so it's not my primary focus. I heard a good analogy in a YouTube I was watching the other week, where the speaker James Bark, who's quite a well-known sort of figure in the testing space. He was basically talking about, like when you build a house, traditionally, you would be deeply involved with, every element of what building that house looked like, right? So, I mean, you build the foundations, you build the walls and the ceiling, then you start putting the windows in, the plumbing, the electrics, et cetera, et cetera. And you know exactly what that house looks like because you've been involved in the building of it from, the ground up, literally. versus, if an AI comes along and builds that house, then you have no idea what that house looks like until, it's done, right? I mean, you're going to walk in there and you're going to be like, how big's the kitchen? Do I even have a kitchen? How many bedrooms do I have? Et cetera, et cetera. And it's that shift of like understanding and seeing what it is that's actually been built. You don't have any of that until the work is actually done, versus taking a more sort of iterative, step-by-step approach where you were deeply involved and had insight and visibility into all of that stuff at every stage. So from that perspective, I would say, yeah, we do need to know. We do need to know what the AI is doing. We do need to be, checking quality at every stage of the development process, I think, so that, there is that sort of, I don't know, traceability, if you like,
Mhm.
of intent through to delivery.
How are we doing on time? I feel like we've only answered 2 questions
I
somehow, and
know,
we're
I
almost at
know,
the
yeah,
end. Let's keep
yeah.
rolling.
This is so good though, right? Um, Here's another question from Fred. I'm just going to go through these in the order that I see them. So, how would you help a manager understand the change to the role of QA in AI testing, and how it's not just about removing QA team members and feeding the test cases to AI to run automatically? So more about the role shift, this one.
Mm-hmm. I've and transparently, I this is my first like through and through like quality related company I've been in. I've worked with QA organizations and whatnot over the years for sure. So I will give my perspective. I would love feedback on it in chat or email follow up. Find me on LinkedIn. But when I read this, my mind kind of does kind of think about the origins of DevOps in a sense. There was this kind of a little bit of a clash with the ops group and the dev group. And what I think brought it all together was the orientation on shipping and delivering higher quality software at scale that separates from competition. I say that a lot. Apologies, but the alignment on what they're trying to do together, because one side wants stability, therefore no change. The other side wanted to build and scale, but they had to realize, or they wanted to build, but they had to realize that their thing had to run if they wanted to get that like good feedback loop from building. So how do they work together? And right now with just AI output that we're seeing, Microsoft had a recent study also. This is quoting something separate from ours, but they had a recent study, Git pushes and Git commits up 73% something year over year. It's only going to increase. So if we are really starting to now have the questions, you see GitHub's availability, by the way, having issues. You see Amazon talking about production related incidents due to AI output. If there is this code, this quality conundrum right now, given the massive catalyst and massive amplifier that AI can be for writing code, I start viewing my QA teams and just QA quality organization more as a partner with dev on, hey, this is happening. We see it happening all around us. We might even already be feeling it. How am I not just going to use AI to automate my job, but think about the intents, the test cases, my knowledge of the application, the behavioral contract we said earlier, and weave this into the team's agent of choice, agent harness of choice, and really work with product and with the development teams to maintain and context engineer this layer that is specific to our company, specific to this team, helps people onboard faster, helps reduce the amount of churn time or back and forth, or new bugs found, regression issues. There's some metrics that we've found over the years, and not just the Dora or space metrics, but just other frameworks that we know that when we look at those within the context of AI and when that usage started, and maybe efforts that you're making with those other teams to really build out that context layer, maybe there's some positive indicators there that can show return on investment and like a different way of viewing the QA teams or organizations in their role. I would agree though with what you said, not just like, to me, like, yeah, absolutely, not just removing team members, removing humans from the situation, which is very much a concern that I see across the industry with job cuts and whatnot out there. But then also not just using AI just to automate. Like, okay, yes, automate, but like, how do we rethink how we work together to focus on delivering more value to customers?
Yeah, great answer. Yeah, in the interest of time, I'm just going to jump straight to the next question. So we're going to do 2 more questions, and then I've got a couple more slides to present, and then we're going to wrap up. So at this pace, it looks as though we might run a little bit over the original hour, but we're having fun, right? So we'll keep going.
Fireside.
So there's a 2-part question from Stephen here. Any recommendations for smaller teams starting to use AI? And the second part, any recommendations for companies who are security conscious, write sensitive code?
Yes, I would say. One thing I tell all my people, just start using it. There is, every company is going through this governance, compliance, and governance kind of exercise because there's such a high demand and there's a lot of uncertainty of unknowns. Things are getting a little better now with the enterprise model of Anthropic and what they have. Of course, OpenAI, Gemini. I mean, every frontier labs now has it seems like pretty decent enterprise options, and I understand that many companies might take a little time to get to that point. So what I usually tell my people is, hey, and financially, it might not be something that everybody can do, but if you can pay for that $20 per month plan, like personally, and just use the stuff on your own, I very much encourage it, because that's when I felt myself, like my understanding, my clarity on how to think of strategy when it came to product in relation to AI. That's when I really leveled up, is when I just got hands on. It is so experiential, and I talk with friends about it also, where they get lost in just the chat, and no offense to anybody, but like just the dumb chat, like back and forth, and like it's a clean slate every chat, and like they're like, is this it? Is this everything? I'm like, no, it's not. And I try to tell them and encourage them to use that plan, really understand and think about the compounding learning, the context, setting good specs or guides, requirements, all that kind of thing. So use it would be my first thing. I've been around, past company and this company. We've very much focused on getting some type of enterprise plan fast, having a model gateway available so that you can provide a little bit of flexibility to your workforce when it comes to which models to use. It's maybe not as clean of a turnkey Claude code experience that you just pay for Anthropic and Anthropic alone. But when you go the model gateway route, if you have a model provider or multiple model providers, you can start providing different models which have different cost profiles, which is very helpful. And also you decouple yourself from some availability issues, whether it's dependency on the new Fable model, or something's going on with Anthropic or OpenAI or whatever. It's nice having that flexibility, and you start understanding the characteristics of models in a pretty novel way. So model gateway also gives you your security team will like the ability to see tool calls and model usage and have a central point to see the spend. So I think there's a lot of benefits going that model gateway route, but just using it in general is super important. And be conscious, they're like super sensitive depending on what your data classification matrix is, if there is one. Think about it, because there is probably some stuff you don't want to send off to a public large language model, even if it goes through your own enterprise license or goes through your own gateway. Some stuff probably shouldn't. Maybe that's a local model, maybe it's no model. Maybe you need to remember deterministic coding and working with teams to do stuff in a way that isn't leveraging a large model or small model of any sort.
Yep. Okay, final question from our attendees, and I think this one is a good one as well. So this is from Tim. what sorts of metrics are you finding different roles are interested in seeing when it comes to AI assisted development? And we all know, some of the challenges with metrics and how those things are utilized and communicated and gamed potentially. So yeah, curious on your thoughts for this one, JP.
Definitely not token use alone. Uh, Although I use it as an input. To me, it's interesting from a timeline perspective. Okay, if I see a team that's started really ramping up their token use in beginning of June, I use that as a mental note as I then look at other known metric frameworks that have been vetted and pressure tested over time. The Dora framework, for example, from the Accelerate book that I think it's now with Google. Google's kind of like for over Dora research, I believe. But you know, metrics like that, and it's to me, it's always a combination of metrics. But space framework, DX Core 4. There's I'm sure a whole litany of other metric frameworks that have existed. For other disciplines and other organization or other functional groups within organizations. I I try to use the stuff that's pressure tested and validated, and then just use the token use as a lens to then look at that data and see if there's a story to tell. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I do like to look at token usage though, because if I see huge usage and some of those other metrics are static, it's like, okay, do we have an education gap? Is there something we need to think about here? If I see uh, the inverse, minimal token usage and a huge boost there, it's like, wow, are these guys, how are they efficient with their AI use and token use, and are they doing something that we can think about from the other teams individually? I look at it and am curious, because I think there's individual training opportunity, and then at a team or organization level, there's also interesting insights there. So
Definitely.
maybe nothing revolutionary there, Tim, but I would look for stuff that have resonated for your group or your leaders in the past, and then use that timeline of AI usage to see if there's something there to dig on.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for all of your questions. I'm going to jump back into the slide deck now and just start to kind of wrap things up with a couple of final slides here. Thank you, JP, for all of your insights and answers to those questions. That was super valuable. So just real quickly, a couple of things that we wanted you to take away, mainly related to the sort of hypothesis, the argument that I was making earlier on in the presentation. So, two key takeaways. If your AI is writing the code and the test cases at the same time, then, there's a strong argument, I think, that those tests stop being evidence. So I think one of the sort of sources of value for independent QA teams in the past has been that they were independent, right? They were carrying out their testing, they were writing their test cases independently of the implementation, and that independence is kind of what gives their assessment, their evaluation of what's being tested, some degree of weight. When your AI tool is generating both the product and the tests for that product, then feels like there's a problem there, right? That independence is gone. Passing tests only really prove that the code satisfies the specification. They don't prove that the specification was right in the first place. So there's a bit of a challenge here for us to address, I think. It's not an argument that we shouldn't use AI for testing, because there's obvious benefits to doing that. It's an argument for understanding what it is your tests are actually proving when your AI has done both things, right? So we need to be conscious of that, I think. And the second one, obviously AI is a magnifier, not necessarily an equalizer. So teams with clear intent get dramatically more productive in our experience. We've got the metrics to back that up. we're sending it out we're sending those things out to some of our customers as we're having sort of conversations around some of the MCP beta testing that we've been doing recently. And conversely, teams that don't have clear intent get vague output at scale, right? And that's a problem. So, what we're seeing is that AI doesn't close the gap between good teams and teams that are struggling. It actually widens it. And we think winners are going to be not necessarily the most aggressive adopters. They're the teams that were already good about being explicit about what they're trying to build and that are getting better at doing that. So, kind of wrapping up here with our vision for where we're going, based on, some of the things that we've been talking about, some of the challenges that we're seeing, some of the learnings that we're having both internally and as we're talking to our customers. And I'll say up front, this is where we're heading, right? This isn't a roadmap. It's not something that we're claiming we've shipped yet. It's where we think we're going, both as a company and in terms of the products that we're delivering. So, as I said up here, Sembi manages more enterprise test history than any other company in the market, right? I mean, we own TestRail, X-Ray, and Testmo. We've got RunnerX in there and some other products as well. That's a lot of testing and quality context, right? And that's a foundation that we are building upon, turning all of that context, that information into grounded, compliant AI context across our products, across Testmo, TestRail, X-Ray, and RunnerX. So there's three big ideas on this slide, and they kind of connect directly to what we've been talking about. So intent-driven development. The argument that we've been making is that AI needs quality context, intent, expected behavior, all of those things to build the right thing rather than just a plausible thing. And this is the kind of product answer to that. Your intent, your test context feeds your AI so that the next change it makes is better informed than the last one. So, the framing here is kind of the dream of test-driven development finally possible. And I think that's right, because TDD as a discipline, test-driven development as a discipline, has always been about making intent explicit before code gets written. And we're building towards that being the normal way that AI-assisted development works. Second thing here, real-time context. This is the kind of feedback loop. Agents reading every change, identifying gaps, impact, risk, and feeding all of that back into the software delivery lifecycle, again, so that the next build is better informed than the last one. So I think this is a different model from what a lot of teams have today, where quality is kind of a gate at the end. This is, quality context running continuously inside of the loop rather than after it. And then finally, empowers embedded into empowering the AI software delivery lifecycle. So, Sembi works where your team already builds, in the developer environment, in your PR reviews, in Slack, in your CI, surfacing intent and orchestrating your QA workflows, QA intelligence. Not another separate tool to switch to. That quality context instead being delivered right into the flow where the work is actually happening. That's the direction that we're heading in. Circling back to the title, basically answering, with product, the problem that we've been talking about. AI helping teams build faster, making sure they know exactly what it was they meant to build, supplying evidence to the build process that is trusted, and answering the question of who's accountable for the human in the loop decision making. So that's our vision. That's where we think we're heading. Hopefully you're in agreement with that vision and on board with it. It's been super fun to have JP doing this fireside chat. So thank you, JP. Thank you to everyone for attending. I think we've already done the Q&A. So we're going to call it a wrap. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hope to see you all at the next one.
Thank you all. Reach out on LinkedIn or send our support some questions if you have anything else for Simon and I to follow up on.
Thanks all.